Hey guys, in this lesson I'm going to help you unlock the groove and intensity behind the song Legion by TesseracT. This song is a great challenge for drummers looking to tighten their timing, build stamina, and master odd subdivisions in a musical context. And in this lesson I'll break down some of the core drum parts, explore the dynamic shifts, and dig into the subtle ghost notes and syncopated patterns that drive the song. So let's get into it. Would you believe me if I told you that the time signature for this song is all 4/4, all the way through? Well, it is. This is something that we enjoy doing in TesseracT. We take a handful of odd-timed concepts and we make them groove. One of the best ways you can do this is by writing out an odd-timed ostinato, a repeating pattern, and placing that underneath a consistent quarter note pulse. This makes it interesting for the musician to play and accessible for most listeners, while still retaining some of the more complex elements of the music that we enjoy. The song begins with an ostinato that repeats after 8 bars, and the first step is to memorize this ostinato. One of the most tried and tested ways of doing this is to listen to the pattern on repeat while trying to tap it out on one hand and filling in the gaps with the other hand. So for this groove, I'll play the accents with my right and the spaces with my left. The advantage to understanding the pattern at this level is that the spaces you play with your left hand become some of the ghost notes that you play once the groove is fleshed out. It helps to make the groove really flow. The next step is to play the patterns in place, so the right hand becomes the kick drum, and my right hand actually goes up to the auxiliary hats to keep a quarter note. The snare drum accents land in the middle of the bar on the 3rd quarter note, and with my left foot I'll play 8th notes on the pedal hat. The only thing left to add now is a couple of ghost notes to just help flesh that groove out and make it flow a little more. And I put some of those in from that original pattern we played between the right hand and the left hand where we were filling in the gaps. One of the trickiest parts about this groove is playing 3 kick drums in a row with one foot. And to do this, I have to consciously sit up a little higher, a little straighter to center my core. And I use a type of slide technique on a single pedal where I bounce the first 2 hits using my tiptoe, and then I follow through for a 3rd hit by sliding my tiptoe forwards a little bit. This is an advanced technique to master as a drummer, and with different pedals and pedal settings, it'll require some fine-tuning for every player. But it's definitely a technique that's worth spending some time on, because I found it useful on many occasions outside of this song. Ride groove. Okay, this section was the most daunting groove in the song to try and master, if I'm honest. The kick and snare pattern is the same as the song intro, but there's a separate 6-stroke ostinato on the ride that's also displaced against the quarter note pulse. Let me explain. The ride ostinato plays on the 2, 5, and 6 of a 6-stroke count, and we're playing these as 8th notes. So out of context, let me play you that ride pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's playing over the top of the groove that we were playing previously. This in itself is tricky to play because there's a rest on the first note of the bar, which kind of goes against everything that we naturally want to play as drummers. To make this transition a little easier, I left lead the cymbal that starts the groove so that my right hand is free to begin playing this pattern on the ride. So this is the snare drum fill that goes into the crash that leads the ride section. Starts with a flam, ends with a left-right. Then my left hand goes up to the crash to end the fill and start the bar, and then the right hand immediately goes over and hits the bell. I'll play a little bit more so that you have context. The key to being able to play this whole section is to take it a bar or two at a time. I programmed the whole groove in, and then I followed it along at about 70% speed, a couple of bars at a time. And I only added the next 2 bars once I could play the previous loop consistently. Following this method, it took me a couple of 40-minute practice sessions to get that whole groove down. And in fact, I was in the studio tracking the album when I learned to play this groove for the first time, proving that this learning technique can work really well even under pressure. The next section in this song gets a little heavier, so we move up to the cymbals, where I occasionally change the groove up to throw in another odd time concept, a polyrhythm, specifically the 3/2 polyrhythm. I switch between keeping a consistent half note pulse on the crash and playing a dotted quarter note, and this dotted quarter note is where we hear the polyrhythm. This dotted pattern in relation to the metronome or the pedal hat is playing a 3/2 polyrhythm. And if you want to learn more about that or other polyrhythms, there are plenty of polyrhythm exercises and lessons on the website. Just use the search function on the lessons page or dive into the Progressive Drumming Masterclass if you have a gold membership. Underneath all of this, the groove remains the same. So switching between straight timing and a dotted pattern is a great way to implement a different feel, even if just for a moment in a groove. The heavy chorus. This is the first time where the groove really changes, and to execute this well, you need a good understanding of that 3/2 polyrhythm that we just talked about, as the right hand is keeping a consistent dotted quarter note all the way through. Other than playing the snare drum accents, which are still landing in the middle of each bar, which can kind of help with the point of reference, the left hand is required to play a handful of cymbal accents, and to isolate these, I recommend using the lesson exercise to slow this section down and isolate these moments. Another thing to mention about this groove is that I use a double pedal for this section so that I can really lay into the kick drum. This groove is meant to be heavy, and switching to a double kick here really gives me that power and control. The second half of the song is a little bit more laid back and dreamy, and a fun fact, we actually wrote this whole section in the studio. The music for this part didn't exist, so I wrote some drums by playing along to another TesseracT song called Mirror Image, and I just played different drum parts over that song. We then took those drum parts, chopped them up, and wrote the rest of this song to it. This can be a really effective way to come up with new ideas. You play along to something that you already know, but you change it up a little bit, and then you remove the music and begin composing again to those drums. The key to playing the beginning of this section is to relax. The drums follow a predictable pattern that repeats after 4 bars. And within this pattern, the snare accents seem like they're in odd places, but really they're landing consistently within the context of the groove. The first accent lands on the 4 and in the first bar, the second lands in bar 3 on the second quarter note, and the third accent lands on the first quarter note in the 4th bar. Then the pattern repeats. It's only 4 bars in total. It's really important to learn to navigate the spaces between a groove like this with ghost note patterns, as this enables me to really focus on those patterns when I'm playing live. And it's become one of the only moments in a TesseracT live show where I can truly lose myself in a groove and just focus on my dynamics, really making the quiet stuff as quiet as I can make it, and similarly making the accents, the loud stuff, really precise and defined. So if I slow the groove down, you'll see I'm playing something on most of the 8th notes, as this helps me maintain the flow within the groove. And to keep the ghost notes flowing, I sometimes bring my right hand over from the stack, rather than forcing my left hand to play 3 or 4 rushed ghost notes into an accent. The second half of this groove changes slightly to become more focused. This groove is a little easier to play as the right hand simply aligns with most of the kick drum accents. The drum fill that ends this section is an example of a fill that I play the same every time. It's super musical, and I feel that it concludes this section of the song really nicely. For the exact timing of this fill and the sticking that I use, you can refer to the play-along exercise in this lesson or the notation, and use the built-in player to slow it down. All that's left of the song now is the outro, and this isn't too tricky compared to the earlier grooves in the song. Follow the same type of kick drum pattern as the previous groove, but my right hand goes up to my main crash cymbal, and I allow myself to bounce around, accenting on my other crashes. This section of the song is really great to work on if cymbal accents and limb independence is something that you'd like to develop, as there's a lot going on, and I absolutely felt myself level up once I could play this one. When tackling a section like this, once you understand where the accents fall, it's important to focus on moving efficiently. I'm able to play this section without breaking a sweat because I've dialed in my kit ergonomics and the way that I flow between cymbals. So it could be worth taking a moment to consider your own setup and if there are any optimizations you could make to help you flow around the drums and cymbals any easier. Now this is going to be different for everyone, of course, but a great starting point is to sit behind your kit and ask yourself if there's anything that you don't currently use very often. If there is, it's perhaps because it's in an awkward position and your body subconsciously prefers not to go there. I've tried to align my kit so that it's split left and right. I've got loads of things over on my right because that's my dominant side. Then I have a bit of space in the center with the rest of my kit weighted over to the left. It's way more comfortable for me to play with my kit set up like this on the left and the right. And I can feel this whenever I try to play something that's directly in front of me. There's a little bit of tension there. So that helped me with the decision to move everything left and right. Listen to your body. It'll tell you the changes that you need to make, but you might need to put in the time to really find those things out for yourself. So that's Legion, and something that I took away from being able to play Legion. It's one of TesseracT's most organic and somehow most challenging songs as well. And I hope that this short lesson has given you some insight and ideas that you can apply to your own drumming. If you enjoyed this one, myself and the other students would love to see what you can do. Drop a video of your progress either with this song or the concepts that I share in this song into Discord, and I'll see you in the next lesson.